Namaste and good evening. Welcome to our continuing series, The Synthesis of Yoga with our beloved Rangada. And we are in chapter 3, The Threefold Life, page number 21, second paragraph.
So the chapter heading is Threefold Life. Srimad is describing the threefold life. You can have a purely bodily life without any higher aims or anything. The characteristics of each one he will tell you. The second choice that one man has is to live an intellectual life, a life which is more busy with seeking of knowledge. And the third choice that man has is a spiritual life. Okay? So these are the threefold life. The ordinary material life, the mental life, and the intellectual life, which is the mental life, and the third is the spiritual life. And he is telling you the characteristics of each one. So we have read last time, and I am just repeating, the characteristic energy of bodily life is three he has given you. First is self-preservation, somehow to live and survive. Self-repetition, you go on reproducing yourself. The animal also does that, man also does that, to keep the race going in continuity. And the third is self-multiplication. So the difference we saw last time, self-repetition and self-multiplication. The self-multiplication is the increase in population. And the self-repetition can be just that a father gets himself repeated in his son or his children. Okay? So, the characteristic of body life is no progress, by the way. No progress, just self-preservation. Whatever values you have, you are just preserving them. You are stuck to your comfort zone. Then he goes on to the characteristic energy of pure mind. There, progress and change comes. You want to improve things. You want to seek for knowledge. And that is the characteristic of the mind, the mental energy. So, he says, change, self-enlargement, self-improvement are its proper instincts. So, these are the characteristic energy of mental life. Perfectibility and progress. Okay? So, in the first one, self-preservation, self-repetition, self-multiplication. In the mental life, the basic stress is not so much on self-preservation, but self-enlargement, change, progress. Okay, perfectibility. That is the characteristic of intellectual life. Third one, when you are in the spirit, it's interesting, but neither change nor self-preservation. Okay, change also disappears because we'll read the para and then it will be clear to you. The characteristic law of spirit is self-existent perfection and immutable infinity. Okay. No mutable infinity, immutable infinity. It possesses always and in its own right the immortality which is the aim of life and the perfection which is the goal of mind. So perfection of mind and immortality of the body, these are the things that the characteristic law of spirit wants. Okay? The attainment of the eternal and the realization of that which is the same in all things. We'll discuss that. Beyond all things, equally blissful in universe and outside it, untouched by the imperfections and limitations of the forms and activities in which it dwells, are the glory of the spiritual life. So, bodily life, the material man, only interested in keeping himself in continuity. The mental life wants change, progress, not satisfied with the status quo, wants to change. But in the spiritual life, You don't want change because that is the imperfection of the physical world. Physical world is transient. You want to go to a place where there is perfection, and if there is perfection there is no need of change because it is perfect. Therefore, you go to the immutable perfection. Okay? So this is what Sri Aurobindo is saying. The characteristic law of spirit is perfection, and perfection of the bodily life is immortality, self-preservation. So you get that. And the aim of life and the perfection, which is the goal of mind, both you include, but you are going to a place where there is immutability. Okay? So this is what he's saying about the three characteristics.
And is it possible that there is an interrelation between the three?
Yes, because when you are wanting to get the self-preservation of the bodily life, there is a correction. Na? So you are wanting immortality. But what you get is not immortality of the body, but immortality of the soul. So that's what you get. But there is a certain immortality of the material life also, because the soul goes on taking new births. You are not limited only to one birth. You get again and again there is a rebirth and a reincarnation. So in some sort, even physically there is a immortality. And the mind wants perfection. And that's what you get when you go to the spiritual levels of consciousness. So these three correspond normally to, you would put it in that way, the individual, the cosmic, and the transcendental. The individual world, where all the forms are there, okay, human forms, animal forms, non-material forms, these are all there, but they are only appearances. They are not real form. They are not real. They are appearances. Behind these appearances is the reality. So, the first is the individual, which is the gross physical world. The second is the spiritual world, where you go from the multiplicity to the oneness. And there you start seeing the oneness of things. Still it's not perfect. You go to the third level, everything becomes perfect. So remember these three. So you have the physical world, the subtle world, and the causal world. Or you can put it in this way, you can say the mutable world, the immutable world, and the causal world, which is the supermind. Okay? So that's what is described. The physical world, the physical bodily life for man, the mental life for man, and finally the spiritual life for man. Okay? So these are the characteristics of all these three planes of consciousness. Then he goes on to say, in each of these forms, nature acts both individually and collectively. Now this you must keep in mind all the time, because the statements that you make in philosophy or in yoga are applicable to both the individual as well as the universe. Whatever is there in the universe individually, in the universe, from the highest to the lowest, is there in man in condensed form. The highest is the divine. You have the soul in man, which is divine. You have the supermind, which becomes the mind in man. Okay? Then you have the Chit Shakti at the highest level. That becomes your vital. And the Sat, the substance, which is there, the purest substance, becomes the physical world. So whatever is there in the universe, you are also that. Man is also that, but in a miniature form. So you could say the man is a mini cosmos, and the universe is the maxi-cosmos, if you want. Macrocosm and microcosm.
And Sri Aurobindo says somewhere that, one need not go outside of Earth to explore, different forms, because everything that is there in the universe is symbolically present in Earth as well.
That's right. Okay.
So, yeah.
So, there are two ways of doing. That's what science does. It goes out into the physical world, uses senses, and gets knowledge of the physical world. But there's another better way of doing, because you have everything within yourself. Go into yourself and discover the essence of things. When you go out, you are discovering the details of things. When you go into yourself, you are discovering the essence of things.
And is there a point where the two meet?
That will be at the highest level in the supramental
Supermind.
plane of
Okay.
consciousness. Both the things are there.
But only at the supramental,
Yeah.
not at
No.
below.
Even at the second level of the spiritual planes of consciousness, there is a dichotomy between the two.
Even at the overmind, there is a
Yes.
dichotomy between the essential reality and the manifesting reality.
Yes, that's right. You are seeing both. The world also exists for you, and the reality of the spirit also exists for you. But there does not seem to be a very strong connection between the two. There is a dichotomy between the two.
Right. And also, does the nature of duality become different as we go higher in
Yes,
planes? Okay.
very much. The dualities are because the one becomes the many, but as you keep climbing in consciousness from one level to another level, the tendency is towards the oneness. So even when you go to the second level of this spiritual planes of consciousness, you start seeing that the dualities are only two extreme poles of the same vibration. That's why morality disappears when you go into the spiritual planes of consciousness. Okay? Human love and human hate are really at the same level.
Because they are like, for me, like love and hate are two sides of the same coin.
Yes, that's right. Obverse and reverse. Okay?
Right. One is in its obscure form and one is in its
That's
illumined
right.
form.
There is another way of explaining that, and I think I mentioned last time, but I repeat, it's very interesting. If you are a little scientific minded, then you will understand. How is it that the essence of truth and falsehood is the same? How is it that the essence of generosity and miserliness is the same? How is it that kindliness and cruelty, the basic vibration is the same? How is it? You can explain it in this way. Take the light, okay, any light. Its color is determined by its frequency. There is frequency and there is amplitude. Okay, so frequency is the how many times is it vibrating in 1 second. Okay, so that's the frequency. So let us take a range of 5 centimeters, and the frequency of this light is going up and down frequency 50 times per second, but within a range of 5 centimeters. Now, you take 10 centimeters, but the frequency remains the same. So now it is vibrating over 10 centimeters, but 50 times a second. So the basic character is the same, but the quality of light has changed. You follow? Red can become blue, blue can become green, green can become violet, but basically it is the same. So this is the reason why cruelty and kindliness are essentially the same, only two different amplitudes. One this side, one that side. Okay? So that's why. And then that's it. When you go to the spirit, that's what you see. Now we go to the next para. In each of these forms, nature acts both individually and collectively. So the connection between the individual and the collective is there. For the eternal affirms himself equally in the single form and in the group existence. The eternal is God, okay? He affirms himself. He is there present equally in the single form and in the group existence. Srimdar is not saying man, he is saying single form. That means the divine presence is there even in a stone, okay? Even in the atom, the divine presence is there. It may be sleeping, it may be almost zero, but still it is there, okay? Equally in the form and the group. And what is this group existence? It can be family, it can be clan, it can be nation, or groupings dependent on the less physical principles or the supreme group of all, our collective humanity. So the collectivity can be of all these things. Okay. He has said nation, groupings, family, clan and nation, but there are groupings sometimes beyond the nation. Okay, there is a Seattle Pact, there is a NATO Pact, many countries come together. Europe today, European Union is a collection of many nations together. So, groupings depending on less physical principles. Okay, so or the supreme group of all our collective humanity. Man also may seek his own perfection. Where is it gone? Man also may seek his own individual good from any or all of these spheres of activity, or identify himself in them with the collectivity and live for it, or rising to a truer perception of this complex universe, harmonize the individual realization with the collective aim. Now, this is typically Sri Aurobindo. The ascetic, the yogi normally is interested only in his own liberation, his only mukti. He releases himself from the prison of body-mind life and escapes into the universe. He has escaped the pain and the suffering and the limitations and imperfections of the physical world, and he is free. And now he has two choices. Either he can continue to exist in the subtle worlds, or he can disappear into the infinite from where he came. He can do this. There are other things also which are possible, and Sri Aurobindo says, get the liberation, but come down into the physical world and help the collectivity. Okay? That's what he's saying. He's saying, and the collective aim. So, what does he mean by collective aim? The evolution in the physical world independent of individuals. Okay? There is first matter, then life comes out, which is independent of individuals, universal phenomena. From there, mind comes up. So the collective aim would be to go beyond the mind. So collective aim would be to go to the next level of evolution. And for Sri Aurobindo, that is very precisely the supermind. He has given great description of what the supermental race will be, but that we will be changing the subject, so we'll stick to that. So when he does that, he is harmonizing his own individual realization, which is liberation from the prison house of body-mind life, with a collective aim. Okay? He does not reject the physical world. He harmonizes his own aim of life with the aim of the evolutionary tendency in humanity and the physical world. For as it is the right relation of the soul with the Supreme, while it is in the universe, neither to assert egoistically its separate being, nor to blot itself out in the indefinable, but to realize the unity with the divine and the world and unite them in the individual, so the right relation of the individual with the collectivity is neither to pursue egoistically his own material or mental progress or spiritual salvation without regard to his fellows, nor for the sake of the community to suppress or maim his proper development, but to sum up in himself all its best and completest possibilities and pour them out by thought, action, and all other means on his surroundings, so that the whole race may approach nearer to the attainment of its supreme personalities. So, even though we would have put all these in different sentences, but he has packed everything into one sentence. So we'll have to go phrase by phrase and see what he's saying. So it starts from for, as is the right relation. Isn't it? Yeah. It starts from there. So, let's see what he's saying. We'll stop at each phrase. For as it is the right relation of the soul with the Supreme. Just now we saw that whatever is there in the universe is there in man. So, there's a connection between God and the individual soul. For as it is the right relation of the soul with the Supreme, while it is in the universe, neither to assert egoistically its separate being, nor to blot itself out in the indefinable. So, who is asserting himself egoistically, separately? The physical man, the materialist, or the one who is living in the bodily life. He is the one who is living his life egoistically, doing things only for himself, preserving himself. What about this? Not to blot itself out in the indefinable. This is the ascetic or the Buddhist. He is blotting himself out in the individual, in the the physical body-mind life disappears in time. But the soul also goes back to where it came from, dissolves. No more individuality. So Srimati is saying, neither we do this, nor we do that. Neither should we be the materialist, nor should we be the ascetic. Even the spiritual aim in life is not enough for Srimati, okay? Not to blot itself out in the independent, but to realize its unity with the divine and the world. Unity with the divine, you can have a relation with the divine, but you can also have a relation with the world. What does that mean? Cosmic consciousness. You become cosmic and you see that you are essentially the same as everybody else. My soul and the soul of somebody else is both divine and goes back to the supreme. Both are the same. You start seeing the oneness of things. That's what Srimati is saying. So, neither to pursue egoistically his own material mental progress, not only material, but even if you are interested only in the mental or spiritual progress, okay, without regard to his fellows, individually you are doing. Even spiritual salvation, liberation is egoistically spiritual because you are concerned only with yourself. So Swami is saying, why don't you worry about the others also and help them? Okay, so that's what he's saying. Without regard to his fellows, nor for the sake of the community, okay, sometimes you want to do things for the community, or to suppress or maim his proper development. This is what some people do. I don't care for my own development. I want development in the material world. I want to help others. Simply saying that's not also right. Develop yourself but also help others. Okay? So, nor for the sake of the community to suppress or maim his proper development, but to sum up in himself all its best and completest possibilities and pour them out by thought, action and all other means on his surroundings. So, perfect yourself first, get the power to give to the others what you have achieved, okay, and pour it out on the surroundings so that the whole race may approach nearer to the attainment of its supreme personalities. What he is saying is that the collectivity can rise to the level of the supreme personalities. Who are the supreme personalities? The realized souls. So, this is very interesting because when you have the capacity, you become a spiritual realized person, you act like a lighthouse. Your love, your knowledge is radiating everywhere. All. You may not see it, but it is radiating everywhere. I give you 2 examples. I can give you many examples, but I give you 2. Raman Maharshi used to sit only in the hall, never speak. Okay? And Westerners usually have a very strong sense of wanting to know mentally things. Okay? So many people used to come. There are any number of cases where they have written their experience. They used to come with a lot of questions I want to ask. But you see that he's sitting quietly in one corner, all the others also sitting quietly. So you just sit down quietly. But he's radiating so much of knowledge and so much of light that all your answers are given to you in silence. And they realize that now I understand everything, I don't need any answers. Physical answers I don't need.
But to be a lighthouse from within, to radiate that kind of light, I feel it has to come when the divine becomes the instrument and there is no sense of ego or...
The ego is definitely not there. You can become a lighthouse only when you go to the spiritual planes of consciousness. You need not necessarily go to the supramental.
Okay.
But even in the spiritual planes of consciousness, ego has disappeared. You are free. You are not bound to your body mind life. And you have knowledge. And that knowledge goes pouring out everywhere. And the proof is that when people come and stand in front of Sri Amdo and Mother, they get experiences. If you are receptive. Okay? It's like the radio station which is broadcasting 24 hours a day. But you have to tune into it. So your receptivity determines how much you are receiving from them. Okay? So this is what Swami is saying, because you have the power, you get the power to actually pass on what you have got to the others. So look at the words, and pour them out by thought, action and all other means on his surroundings. so that the whole race may approach nearer to the attainment of its supreme personalities. In fact, you will see that in many cases, whether it be in Christ or whether it be in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Raman Maharshi or Sri Aurobindo, okay, the closest disciples all had spiritual experiences. So, their perfection sort of radiates into the others. It may not be at the same level, but Srimati is saying, approach nearer to the attainment of the supreme personalities. So clear? So, I can read out the summary of what he's saying here. So, in each of these three forms, the individual and the collective are inhabited by the eternal. The divine is there in both, cosmos as well as the individual. Both the individual and the collectivity can grow, develop, and seek their perfection. The collectivity can be the family, the clan, the tribe, the linguistic group, the nation, and even humanity, which is the last group. Each individual can develop himself, seek his own good in any of such collectivities, okay? In the family or the clan or the nation or anywhere, even in humanity. But he can also identify himself with any one group and work for its ultimate good. But he can also combine both aims, individual and collective, and seek a harmony between them, as the divine is always present in both. The individual in the universe need not suppress himself for the collective benefit, nor should he egoistically assert himself against the universe. He must most certainly develop himself and seek perfection, but not against the universe, but with the universe, in harmony with the universe. Universe means even society. He should not fight the society, but he should live in harmony with society. This is possible not at a normal level, but only at the spiritual level. The race too should develop itself, but not at the cost of the individual. This is interesting. Okay? The individual should think, will, act for the benefit of the collectivity without stultifying his own development and progress. This is the ideal. It doesn't happen very easily. Either it's a collective life, like communist and socialistic societies, or is the free enterprise, the economic freedom that you have in the so-called democratic nations. There also there is the egoism comes up a little too much, but still the ideal would be both get their perfection. The individual thoughts and actions should always be for the good of the collectivity, the whole race, the entire humanity, and the collectivity should ensure the freedom and development of the individual. That's what I'm saying in the para. Okay? So, I'm reading the next para. It follows that the object of the material life must be to fulfill, above all things, the vital aim of nature. The whole aim of the material man is to live, to pass from birth to death, with as much comfort or enjoyment as may be on the way, but anyhow to live. You remember? Self-preservation. Anyhow to live. He is repeating the same idea, but in other words. Self-preservation, anyhow, you must continue to live. He can subordinate this aim, but only to physical nature's other instincts, the reproduction of the individual and the conservation of the type in the family, class or community. What you call, very proudly you call it the tradition. Okay? And the lineage must continue. The family tree must continue. That's usually the material life for the materialist man. He can subordinate this aim, but only to physical nature's other instincts, the reproduction of the individual, the conservation of the type in the family, class or community. Self, domesticity, the accustomed order of the society and of the nation are the constituents of the material existence, Its immense importance in the economy of nature is self-evident, and commensurate is the importance of the human type which represents it. He assures her the safety of the framework she has made and of the orderly continuance and conservation of her past gains. This also, sometimes there is some people say that if you are asking everybody to do yoga and they don't marry and they don't get children, then the race will disappear. So this paragraph is a guarantee that it will never happen. There will be always enough men to live the bodily life and not enter yoga. That's what is guaranteeing. Okay, so this is what is it. The bodily life, the man who lives the bodily life will always be there, and he will preserve he'll preserve himself, the values in the family, the values in society, the values in the nation. And this we very proudly say, we are maintaining our tradition. Tradition is very important. Okay? And the lineage. And this maintaining of the tradition can become a terrible thing, because
We are holding on to the past.
yeah, you're holding on to the past, and see what's happening at the you can marry only within your community, and if you don't do that, you'll be punished, you'll be ostracized, you will be thrown out of society. And in some countries you go as far as to even honor killing your own children, your own sister, your own son. You will kill them because they have dishonored the tradition of the family. So it can go that far.
But I feel that's a very orthodox and a
That's right.
very conventional way of using
Yes.
the word tradition, because
That's right.
tradition has so many richer
That's right.
aspects to it.
So this is the preservation of the bodily life. That's why when you come to the mental life, he has told you that change and progress, that it's a direct contradiction of self-preservation. Self-preservation is necessary first. The right values have to be preserved, but you have to go beyond them. Okay? So
Because as we evolve, the nature of the right values will also change.
yes, the values go on changing at each level. So, but by that very utility, such men and the life they lead are condemned to be limited, irrationally conservative, and earth-bound. That's exactly what we are talking about. The customary routine, the customary institutions, the inherited or habitual forms of thought, these things are the life breath of their nostrils. Tradition, continuity, preservation of family values, social values. They admit and jealously defend the changes compelled by the progressive mind in the past, but combat with equal zeal the changes that are being made by it in the present. So, the old rules that have been established, I accept. But if you want to change the rules and make something better, I won't accept. Okay, that's what is happening. They admit and jealously defend the changes compelled by the progressive mind in the past, but combat with equal zeal the changes that are being made by it in the present. For to the material man, the living progressive thinker is an ideologue. Okay? He's too idealistic, nothing to do with the physical world. He's a dreamer or he's a madman. Okay? The old Semites who stoned the living prophets and adored their memories when dead were the very incarnation of this instinctive and unintelligent principle in nature. The old Semites, the Semitic race, are the Arabs and the Jews. They are like Hindus and Muslims in India, Pakistan. They are the same race, and yet they are opposed to each other. The old Jews and the Arabs, who stoned their living prophets, okay? Stoned their living prophets and adored their memories when dead, were the very incarnation of this instinctive and unintelligent principle in nature. In the ancient Indian distinction between the once born and the twice born, it is to this material man that the former description can be applied. That means once born. He does nature's inferior works. he assures the basis of our higher activities, but not to him easily are opened the glories of our second birth. So, the material man has a very important function in the physical world. He assures the continuation of the race and the preservation of the values that have been obtained in the past. So far, so good. But can he progress to the next level? He can't.
What's the difference between once born and the twice born?
Okay. Once born is the one you see that you have only one life. And the twice born is in the same life, your values change. When you have a spiritual experience, all your old habits and all your old nature changes completely. So the concept of the twice born is there in India, but it's also there in the West. In India, we have what is called Dvija. Dvija. A Dvija is a Brahmin.
Right.
Or is supposed to be. A Brahmin is supposed to be Dvija. Because the role of the Brahmin is to get knowledge and spiritual progress. So, in America also, you have the concept of the twice born. It's, I think, a Christian concept. And Jimmy Carter, who was a president in America, claimed that he was a twice born. He must have had some experience and some opening. So that's it, twice born.
Even in conversations with Sri Aurobindo by Pavitrada is, sharing his experience of having a second birth. And Sri Aurobindo says that in our yoga, you must be, newborn every day.
Yes.
Because that is the level of intensity
That's
that is
right.
required.
That's right.
To change towards the supramental.
So Dvija, the word is usually applied to the Brahmin, but in Sanskrit it is interesting. Even the bird is called Dvija, born twice. First of all, it is born as the egg, and second is born as the bird out of the egg. So Dvija. But the Brahmin, it's usually applied to the Brahmin. He is born a physical man, he is born again as a spiritual man. So that's a Dvija. The inferior works are the continuation of the race, not the disappearance of the race. So that's what I mean by inferior works. Okay? He is not, the sense of progress is not there in the physical man. Okay? He assures the base of our higher activities. Only if there is a continuity can there be a jump into the next level. But if there is no continuity, everything will go away. So he is the basis. He is the lowest frame. He is the foundation from which you can go to the next level. Okay? He does nature's inferior works. And the inferior works are reproduction, okay?
Preservation.
Yeah.
Repetition.
Yeah, repetition and yeah. So, now he is describing, can the spiritual man have an intellectual life and can he have a spiritual life? So, to a certain extent it's possible, and that's what he discusses. He says that the material man, the bodily life, the man who is leading a bodily life, he can have an element of the intellect in him, but he can also have a spiritual element to a certain extent. So that's what he's discussing. Then the intellectual man, can he have a spiritual life? And the spiritual life, can he also have a little of material life and vital life? That's what he'll discuss in these small paras. So, yet he admits, who is the he? The material man, the one who is living a bodily life. Yet he admits so much of spirituality as has been enforced on his customary ideas by the great religious outbursts of the past, and he makes in his scheme of society a place venerable though often not often effective for the priest or the learned theologian who can be trusted to provide him with a safe and ordinary spiritual pabulum. But to the man who would assert for himself the liberty of spiritual experience and the spiritual life, he assigns, if he admits him at all, not the vestment of the priest, but the robe of the sannyasin. Outside society, let him exercise his dangerous freedom, so he may even serve as a human lightning rod, receiving the electricity of the spirit and turning it away from the social edifice. It's a very interesting para. So he's saying that can the normal physical man have a little bit of spirituality in him? Whatever the great religions of the past, note the word of the past, he is very clear. He is talking of, in the past we have had Christianity, Islam, Judaism, the Parsi religion, Zoroastrianism, and Hinduism. In Hinduism also you have Jainism and all these. These are all the past. So you stick to the past. So whatever those religions have told him, he will accept. And he will say, okay, the priest or the learned theologian, I will respect him. But if someone wants to lead a spiritual life, no. The priest can be distinguished by the robe that he wears. Okay? But if he wants to lead a spiritual life, he must go out of society. He cannot remain in society and give his dangerous ideas to society, because that will bring about change to which he is opposed. So he doesn't want that to happen. Okay? The priest can give you sufficient satisfaction for his daily needs. Okay, yes, God is there and I will worship him. But not often effective. It doesn't change his temperament and his character. Doesn't change. Now, Sremda has used an interesting word, to be trusted to provide him with a safe and ordinary spiritual pabulum. The word pabulum is provisions, food. So spiritual food. The priest is giving you spiritual food. He speaks a few good words and you are satisfied. You hear that and you are satisfied. So then that's a normal man. That's why in the West they go on Sundays to church. But going to church is reserved only on Sundays. It is not practiced in the weekly days, no. You go back to your normal life. In India also, on Fridays, you'll go to the temple and worship the priest, okay, give him sufficient respect. But when someone wants to lead a spiritual life, no. You must put on gerwa clothes, the saffron robes, and go out of society. Because if you are in society, you will be corrupting the youth. That was the charge against Socrates. And he was not allowed to do that, and he was poisoned to death. Okay? So, this is the thing, that the physical man will respect the traditions of the old, but new traditions he will not accept. That's what Sremda is saying. But to the man who would assert for himself the liberty of spiritual experience and the spiritual life, he assigns, if he admits him at all. Okay, normally you say you go away. Not the vestment of the priest. I think the vestment of the priest in all religions is very distinguished. In the Christian, they wear very special clothes. You can identify them. The Pope also has a very clear, different robe. The Archbishop and the bishops also have their own.
But it's since you're talking about this, I remember when I had gone to the US, and in the Metropolitan Museum there in New York, they had a whole exhibition of sort of designer clothes for the priests and the nuns, and it had really interesting dress designs. So maybe even that is sort of breaking.
Yes.
In fact, there was also a dress for like an androgynous person who is both man and female. So, that's why, like, even fashion designing is a means to break the stereotypes and the so-called traditions and the traditional clothings. But again, it wants to give it a form. It wants to give it an identity, or,
This idea of going beyond the present status is there in art also.
Yeah.
That's why Picasso started that. And he says, why should I paint a man as he is? I want to go behind the form. So he'll put the nose somewhere else and the eyes somewhere else. I want to go beyond the form. That's the whole idea. The idea is good, but the execution is sometimes not at all
Not at all,
aesthetic.
yes.
Okay? And that's the same with poetry also. They want to go beyond the fixed rhythms. So they go into prose poems.
Yes.
In America, Walt Whitman was the one who started writing prose poems. The ideas are excellent and the expression of it, but sometimes the prose poems are not very successful poetically. Okay.
And also, even like, I mean, in modernizing things, we are, moving away from the classical form of things, which is also a form of deterioration.
Yes.
Because poetry is rhythm, poetry is music in its highest form.
Yes.
And to not capture that is showing that somewhere in our consciousness we are not open enough to that highest form of mantra which Aurobindo says.
That is the reason why evolution, when it is going up, is imperfect. And when you are going from one level to another level, you are trying to go towards truth, but you are starting from falsehood. So you don't know where to go. So you often go into the wrong directions. So change is good, but the change often introduces elements which are not very helpful to progress. That also can happen. Okay? So Srinath is using a very interesting image. Let the spiritual man be a human lightning rod, receiving the electricity of the spirit and turning it away from the social edifice. Society must remain as it is, must not be disturbed, and let him exercise his freedom outside society. But let him not disturb the present static condition of society. That's what he's saying. In the next paragraphs, he will be discussing also can the mental man also have a little bit of spirituality? That's what he will be discussing.